What's up, y'all? Grab a beer and gather around. Let's talk thorns and roses. This is the follow-up video to Lone Star Hiking Trail Thru-hike Part 1. And this is the thorns and roses portion of that before I end up go off and do Part 2 and finish up section hike those last 13 miles. So let's talk about gear, let's talk about a little bit of food and water, and we'll talk about the trail. And then after we get into the thorns and roses of that, we'll talk a little bit about what the road walk was like, maybe a little bit of the water situation, and then we'll wrap it up with just some overall thoughts. So, roses. I think my tent, and you can see this a little bit in the videos, is going to be one of my things that I absolutely love. So I used this guy right here. This is the Durson X-Mid 1P. I love that this thing set up with trekking poles. This is my first trekking pole tent. I've always been a freestanding tent person, but this thing set up really nicely. I was able to put it together in about 2 minutes. Super quick, super easy. And everything that I'm talking about today in this video, I will have a link in the description of the video with my LighterPack loadout for the Lone Star hiking trail. And I should have links to probably about 95% of the items that I'm talking about today. So if you're curious about them, you can go through there and really read the description and do a little bit of that research yourself. Today is really just what worked for me on my trip and my experience out there here, January 2022. I used the MSR mini Groundhog stakes. These are only like 6-inch stakes, and they held up in the different soil types that we ran into there on the Lone Star Trail. You know, a little bit of sand, a little bit of dirt, a little bit of, sand with some pebbles and stuff mixed into it. But overall, really, really well done stakes. And this tent, the bare minimum, it sets up with just 4 stakes, 2 trekking poles, and then I used 2 additional stakes, one at each vestibule, because it just worked out really well that way, and I was able to one hand open and close the zippers on that tent. The headlamp that I used out there was the Nightcore NU25, and this guy right here was absolutely a wonderful piece of gear to use. You can see this is really, really flat. You can see it in the video that I use it in there. One thing that I will change going forward, though, is I'll probably look to like a little bungee strap cord or something like that, shock cord that I can use in places. Just cut a couple of ounces down in the pack weight. Easily, I got 10 plus hours out of that before I charged, and I probably didn't even need to charge it. I know for my dad, he did not charge it until, actually, I don't think that he charged his headlamp the entire trip. I would definitely recommend that. It's a nice rechargeable headlamp, and that's what really drew me to it, along with the white light and the red light. The chair that I packed out there was one that my wife had actually purchased off of Amazon, and I thought this worked out really well, except in the same style as like what your Helinox is, and I may eventually upgrade to a Helinox chair, something that is, only about a pound and a half. This one weighs just a hair over 2 pounds, but I would highly recommend this piece of equipment if you are going out on a trip. Just that little comfort and knowing that you had somewhere dedicated to sit. You weren't going to get you weren't going to sit on a wet log or a hard rock, be it on your breaks or while you're there in camp. It was something that a piece of equipment that I'm going to continue to use, but I might look for something just a little bit lighter going forward. Okay, we're going to talk about poop. But yes, so this is a poop trawl, and this guy is really, look at that. This is like, very thin. This is what I was using in the past right here. That's not poop on there. That's dirt. Actually, that's where the sticker used to be. But anyway, this is what I used in the past, and this right here is about 3 times heavier than this. It's actually more than that. This is about 54 ounces or 54 grams. This is just under 17 grams, And what I really liked about this versus this guy here is you can see these serrations. If I hold this up right over my face, you can see the serrations on this. This was great for cutting through roots and all that other kind of stubborn stuff. You don't get that with one of these guys here. So those are the things that went great for gear. Let's move on to food and water, and then trail, and then we'll pop over to the things that didn't go so well. I tried out Peak Refuel bag meals, and then I also went with Fire Pot bag meals and some Backpacker's Pantry. And by far as far as flavor, texture, quality of food and calorie content, I've really got to go with Peak Refuel on this. If you haven't tried any of their stuff, give them a shot. They're really high in protein. They've got some great amount of fiber in there. And these are meals that are about as complicated as you could probably get in a bag meal. Between them and the Fire Pot meals, I was really pleased and happy with those because they just seemed hearty enough, like something that we would make here for dinner at the house. So definitely look into those. What I really liked about this trail is it was really well signed, almost overblazed at some points in it, but it's a well-worn trail. It's not overused. All of the hunter camps seem to be really well spaced apart. If you're looking to do 10 to 14 miles daily, you're not going to have a problem finding a camping spot in there. And if you stay at the hunter camps, they're going to have, at the very minimum, a fire ring. There'll be a kiosk showing you that this is, in fact, a hunter camp. And you will also have a tent pad. So if you have one tent that you're setting up, you're in business. If you have 2 or more tents that you are setting up, not so much. But there are other spaces. They're not the tent pad sites for you to set up a tent. And we did that at several of the ones just because it was like, well, you take the tent pad site. No, you take the tent. Okay, all right, fine. Neither of us will take the tent pad site, and we will find somewhere really close to set up our tents together. These are really well-maintained sites. Very minimal trash. I think the only place that we found that seemed to not be as well maintained was the Phelps Primitive Campsite. It gets a lot of use, that particular one, but that was the exception rather than the rule. So one of the great things about this trail is that because of the tall pine forest that you have out there, you are protected from high winds. At a lot of these campsites, the only exceptions that I'm going to say that I experienced were at the established places. So Stubblefield, lake campgrounds, double lake campgrounds, those you're not as protected because, again, you're not in the forest at these dedicated sites. And now I'm parched. All right, so let's talk about the things that weren't so good, the thorns of the trip. Gear-wise, so I have some thorns with the gear that I brought, and it's not a failure so much on the gear as it was that I hadn't tested the gear down to the limits I was pushing it to. With the temperatures that we experienced, because we had some nights that were in the upper 20s, low 30s, I would like to have a long sleeve poly cotton blend for my sleep shirt instead of just a cotton t-shirt. I'm not bringing a damn pillow, y'all. I'll bring a chair. I'm not bringing a damn pillow. My puffy coat just was not warm enough for this particular trip. And the same kind of goes along with the sleeping bag that I have. Now, the sleeping bag I have is only rated down to 40 degrees. It's a down sleeping bag. So again, not necessarily a failure of the gear, just a poor choice on my part as far as what gear I was taking out there. When I got into the upper 20s, I actually took my Frog Togs poncho and I put that as a top layer over my sleeping bag. And that added, I was surprised, that added about 10 degrees of warmth to that. And I mean, there were points where I had to actually unzip the bottom of the bag because I was starting to get a little overheated in my bag. So there are certain things that, I found I could do to help stay warm, but if I had a bare bag, I wouldn't have needed to do that. If I'm on a longer trip and I have 2 of those, go away, you damn fly. Did I get them? I didn't get them. Food and water. The only bag meal that I brought that I was not a big fan of was the Good to Go mushroom risotto. It just didn't have enough flavor for me, and I know risottos aren't spicy, but I like a lot of spicy food. I mean, like burning, near blackout, kind of spicy. And I think I was just in that mood. I'm like, oh man, I really just want something spicy. I had that. I'm like, The only other, I think, food, fail that I had was it was the same brand of jerky you see that my dad holds up somewhere when we're at Double Lake Recreation. It's the Uncle Mike's by H-E-B. I had a few bags of the red pepper, was not a fan of those, and that's just me personally. I like red pepper on a lot of the other foods and stuff that I eat. Again, I like spicy, but when it came to that, it just, I don't know, something was off about the flavor, didn't like it. I will stick with the black pepper and the smoked because those were my jam right there. That was really it as far as food fails for me out there on the trail. Everything else seemed to work out really well. One of the things I would have liked to have seen is blazes for the road walks. Now, I know this in itself is going to cause some challenges because if you don't have something like All Trails, which is what I used while I was out there on the trail, or if you don't have the book, you're not carrying the book with you or the summaries, it can get a little bit tricky out there. Obviously, not all of it is paved. So you would have to get cooperation with either city, county, or state level for the road blazes. But on areas where you don't have that pavement, you're going to have to get cooperation from private landowners and or possibly businesses. Pick up the book. If you go to the Lone Star Trail website or if you go onto the Facebook page, you're going to hear all about the book. Pick up the book. It's a great resource for learning an overall about the trail. I wouldn't recommend taking the book with you because that thing it weighs too much. Don't take it with you. But what I did is I snapped pictures of all of the summaries at the end. So then I could take that with me and, okay, all right, here, coming up in 0.2 miles, coming up in 0.1 miles. We've got a road walk coming up. Hey, it says that there's supposed to be water up here. Do that. This puppy right behind me. And that is the Sam Houston National Forest map. I think they're like $15-20, something like that. I really just left that here for my wife and boys to kind of keep track of where I was and be able to pin on the map. They didn't pin on the map. I just have the starting and end point, which we'll go back out and we'll redo that. Before we get to road walking. Okay, so road walks. You have about 9 road walks total, and it's about 18 miles in total for those road walks. Most of them are anywhere from about a couple hundred yards to the longest one is the one that starts there at Ira Denson Road. You pass by Evergreen Baptist Church, which, again, shout out to those folks. Thank you so much for being so hiker-friendly and allowing us to get water from the backside of the church. For most of them, I'd probably say about a quarter of the road walks, you're either on a Forest Service road or you're on a logging road. So there's little to no traffic, or it's somebody that lives in a house or something like that down that road. Really no biggie on those. You have a couple that are 2.5, 3 mile, and then the longest one, like I said, is about 4.5 miles, and that's the Ira Denson Road one. The noisiest was by far the road walk when you got onto the I-45 frontage road, and even that road walk, though, is only right about 2 miles. If you decide to go into Huntsville State Park from I-45 frontage road and the State Park Road, it's going to be about 1.5 miles from that intersection to the kiosk there at Huntsville State Park. If you're just looking to get some lunch and to charge devices, get a patch or a pin or a sticker, keychain, go there from the I-45 frontage road. You'll be just fine. When you do that last road walk, the Ira Denson Road walk, beware of aggressive dogs coming out of the trailer homes that are there after you get onto that road walk. If you got little kids or something like that, I wouldn't recommend. I'd skip that just because of those dogs. Or if you don't have a way to defend yourself, using trekking poles or other means, then that would be another one that I would say go ahead and skip that portion and pick back up at the the Evergreen Baptist Church. Which that last road walk, though, you really only have about this much space to walk on there on the highway. Other than that, you're going into the ditch. And for the most part, drivers were pretty courteous and gave a wide berth when they saw us hiking along the side of the road there. Water fill-ups. This was something that now I used a Sawyer squeeze for most of the trip there. Filtered from streams, ponds, and then I think at one point Stubblefield Lake as well. I carried two 1.5 liter smart water bottles. I had one dedicated as a dirty water bottle that I needed to filter, and one that was dedicated as a clean water bottle. That way, if I was filling up at one of those 4 locations where there was clean water, potable water, I could just simply fill up, and I didn't have to filter that and unnecessarily use my Sawyer squeeze. What I would do for actually carrying water is I would camel up at a location, so I drink about 1.5 liters of water when I got to a water source, and then I would only fill one of my bottles, my 1.5 liter bottles up, and if I knew that we were only a few miles from camp, I'd fill both of them up so I could have plenty of water for dinner and for breakfast, and then camel up in the morning, and then hike out of camp with maybe 1 liter to 0.75 liters, so that I could make it 5 or 10 miles to the next water resource. If you're hiking in the summer, obviously this is going to be different. These were my water needs. Your needs may be different. You might need more water. You might need less. I sweat my ass off when I hike. So I had to drink a lot more water than what my dad had to drink. Ooh. So I have something to sweat out. Do some practice hikes. Figure out what your water needs are and kind of go from there. Gauge it from there. Practice doing that cameling up method on some of your local hikes. See what works for you and your body, because everybody is totally different. My overall thoughts on the Lone Star hiking trail. Let's look at gear, food, and trail. So for gear, prep for something that is going to be damp and humid out there. At the times that you can dry your feet out and dry your gear out, take advantage of that. Something I'm going to try going on trail next is going to be some sort of foot powders to keep my feet dry, because I suffered from blisters so badly, and I haven't blistered in 20 plus years that I've been doing backpacking and hiking. Smart wool gear. I'm definitely looking into more of this stuff. But as far as moisture management, again, I'm a sweaty guy, and so smart wool, the boxers worked out great, the shirt worked out great. If you're using a water filter out there, at least for the Sawyer squeeze, I would not be worried about it clogging up on you. Always take that little doodad with you to unclog it, to back flush it. And then camp chair. I'm taking this thing with me on all my excursions. I love it. Again, I'm going to look for something that's a little bit lighter, but I would recommend that out there so you don't end up with damp clothes by sitting on a rock or a log that's on the damp side. Future gear that I am looking into after this trip, because it's gear that I think will be better suited for a longer trip, is going to be a warmer sleeping bag and a warmer puffy coat. I'm going to look at Enlightened equipment for both of those. They have some custom options on there. And instead of a sleeping bag, I may end up going with a quilt. And then pants and hoodie. Again, something that's going to help for moisture management for somebody like me. It might just be a lighter nylon or polyester instead of the heavy duty stuff that I had on this particular trip. Food. I packed 1.6 pounds of food per day. It was 2,200 to 2,800 calories per day. Again, that worked out great for me. About half to 2/3 of my calories for the day came from my snacks. And you saw some ups and downs in there. You saw some log crossings. But for the most part, this is a really nice trail. It's well marked. 100 camps. Again, they're well maintained. I'd recommend staying at them just for the ability to have a fire during these colder months. It'd be great. You have so many leaves that cover the trail, covering up these roots. Watch your footing. There are lots of water opportunities on this trip as well, on this trail. Again, this is during the winter time. I don't know how that changes in some of the other months and seasons, but I can tell you from my trip, I felt like there was ample opportunities to get water either from streams or to get them from the campgrounds, from ponds and lakes. Last thing you want to do is be dehydrated, be out of water, because confusion sets in and you start making stupid ass mistakes. I know, I've done it. I've been part of that club. But for the most part, where it was stated that there was water in the guidebook, we were able to find water. And then lastly, take the time. Stay at Stubblefield, stay at Double Lake, stay at Huntsville State Park. Take advantage of the ability to get that to get water there. Take advantage of the showers that are there. Talk to other thru hikers that are coming through. And now we come to the end of our video. I'm not at the end of my pint glass though. If you like this video and want to see more content like it, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button below so you'll be notified when new content comes out. If you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section below. In the meantime, always be a student and steward of the outdoors, and I'll see you out on trail.